Everyone told Frank that cash is king. They were wrong. In today's economy, cash is trash, and savers are losers. Here is why. So, if Frank shouldn't hoard cash, where should he put it? To be a victor, Frank needs to understand the trinity of ownership. There are three main doors to wealth. Door number one is business ownership, or stocks. When Frank buys a stock, he isn't gambling on a ticker symbol. He is buying a piece of a real machine. When Frank buys a coffee, he loses $5. But when Frank buys shares in the coffee company, he becomes the owner. Every time someone else buys a coffee, Frank gets a tiny piece of that profit. He stops being the consumer and starts being the supplier. Door number two is real estate. This is Frank's favorite because of one magic word: leverage. If Frank buys $10,000 of stock and it goes up 10%, he makes $1,000. But in real estate, Frank can use that same $10,000 as a down payment on a $50,000 property. If that property goes up 10%, the value grows by $5,000. Frank just made a 50% return on his money because he used the bank's money to get rich. Door number three is hard assets, things like gold, commodities, or Bitcoin. The government can print infinite dollars, but they cannot print gold. These assets are your shield. When the paper money supply floods the market, these assets float to the top. You sleep soundly at night because you see that number in your bank account. It's stable, it's safe, it's responsibility defined. But what if I told you your house is on fire right now? You just can't see the flames yet. Every day you leave your money in a high-interest savings account or under your mattress, you are actively choosing to become poorer. You feel it at the grocery store, you feel it at the gas pump, but you don't feel it in your savings account because the number doesn't change. That is the genius of the scam. They don't take your money, they take your purchasing power. In this video, I'm going to show you how the banking system is rigged to punish savers, why the money in your pocket isn't actually money, and exactly how the rich escape the trap that keeps the middle class on a hamster wheel. To understand the trap, you have to understand two words: nominal and real. Nominal is the number on the screen. It says you have $10,000. Real is what that money can actually do. Since the Federal Reserve was created in 1913, the US dollar has lost over 96% of its value. If your great-grandfather saved $100 to pass down to you, he thought he was leaving you a fortune. Today, that buys you a nice dinner for two. This isn't an accident. It's a feature. It's called the inflation tax. It is the only tax that no one voted for, no one signed up for, but everyone pays. If inflation is 4% and your bank pays you 1%, you are losing 3% of your life energy every single year. You know compound interest makes you rich. Well, compound inflation makes you broke. If inflation averages 7%, which it has in recent years, your savings lose half their value in just 10 years. Imagine working a decade only to find out 5 years of that effort was deleted. But it wasn't always this way. Before 1971, money was tied to gold. You couldn't just print more of it. Saving actually worked because money was a store of value. In 1971, the link to gold was severed. We entered the era of fiat currency. This means your money has value only because the government says it does. And because they can print an infinite amount of it, the supply goes up and the value of your savings goes down. This introduces a concept called the Cantillon effect. When new money is printed, the people closest to the printer, banks, tech giants, hedge funds, get the money first while it still has value. By the time it trickles down to your paycheck or savings account, prices have already risen. You are playing a game that was lost before you even rolled the dice. Look at the skyline of any major city. Who has the biggest, tallest, most expensive buildings? The banks. How do they afford that if they are just holding your money? They don't hold your money, they use it. It's called fractional reserve banking. You deposit $10,000. They are legally allowed to lend out 90% of that to someone else for a mortgage or a car loan at 7% interest. They use your capital to make massive returns, and they pay you 0.5% as a thank you. And the worst part? If the bank gambles bad and loses, the government bails them out with, you guessed it, more printed money that devalues your savings even further. Banks know that money must move to grow. Cash is a hot potato. They get rid of cash as fast as possible by buying assets or lending. Yet, they tell you to keep holding the hot potato. So, how do we escape? We have to stop acting like consumers and start acting like owners. The wealthy do not have savings accounts. They have investment portfolios. Step 1. Calculate your emergency fund. 3 to 6 months of expenses. Keep this in cash for safety. But realize, this is insurance, not an investment. You are paying a premium, inflation, to have liquid cash. Step 2. Move the excess. You need hard assets, things that cannot be printed. When they print more dollars, the price of the house goes up. The price of the S&P 500 goes up. The price of gold goes up. You aren't getting richer, the dollar is just getting weaker. But because you own the asset, you are protected. The scary truth is that playing it safe is the riskiest thing you can do. Let me know in the comments, how much was a gallon of milk when you were a kid? Let's see how bad the inflation really is. The rules of money changed in 1971, but our education system is still teaching the rules of 1950. Don't let your hard work evaporate. Be an owner. Own the companies, own the land, own the debt. Stop being a savings victim. Start investing like a victor. Now, Frank understands the assets, but he makes a fatal mistake. He says, I'll start investing when the market looks safer. Maybe next year. Let's look at 2 timelines. On the left, Frank waits 10 years to start because he's waiting for the crash. On the right, Frank starts today. This is the cost of waiting. It's called compound interest. Because investor Frank started early, his money made babies, and his money's babies made babies. Even if waiter Frank saves double the amount later, he can never catch up. He ran out of the most valuable asset of all, time. Time in the market beats timing the market. Don't be waiter Frank. There is one final trap we need to discuss. Most people are terrified of debt, and they should be, if it's the wrong kind. This is bad debt. Frank uses it to buy things that lose value, like TVs, cars, or clothes. This debt steals from his future to pay for his present. It makes him a slave to the bank. But the wealthy use good debt. They borrow money at 5% interest to buy an asset that pays them 10%. They use debt to buy freedom. They don't pay the loan, the tenant or the business pays the loan. Frank thinks he has solved the puzzle. He has purchasing power now, but he is standing on a foundation of debt that is ready to crumble. We watch him fall. In the next episode, stay tuned